Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. I am Crybaby Pumpkin or Lulu, and today we're doing something a little bit special, but we're still dealing with AI Somnium Files. I was asked to do this by one of the people who regularly comments on my videos and shows up to premieres and stuff. They said that they were struggling with the full plot of this because there's a lot going on, and it does get difficult to keep track of, so I figured now that I finish it, I can go through and kind of lay out all the information as best I can so that you can all make sense of it as clearly as you can. So first thing, and I have the flowchart pulled up here because we will be using this later, but the first part of this is just going to be talking about everything that happened before the game, because a large majority of the story actually takes place before any of the branching paths, any of the branching timeline stuff. So we're going to start at 18 years ago. So 18 years ago, there was two things really going on. The first is that we had three friends who were in high school, which are Monica Iwai, Hitomi Sagan, and Renju Okira. The other thing that's relevant at this time is that we have a politician, So Sejima, and his son, Saito Sejima, who are affiliated with a Yakuza gang called the Kumakuras. So these two groups end up interacting because So Sejima, the old politician, and Monica Iwai, the barely legal 19-year-old girl, have a child together. This child will be named Iris eventually, but Monica goes to talk to So about this newborn child and gets surprise murdered by So's child, Saito. So Saito Sejima murders Monica Iwai 18 years ago, and that's what starts this whole chain of events. What So Sejima then did was contacted the Kumakura gang and had the head of the Kumakuras, Rohan, take care of hiding the body. So Rohan takes Monica's dead body to the woods and to bury it in a shallow grave. However, before he does this, he removes her right eye. From there, Renju and Hitomi snuck to follow this, and they saw Monica get buried. So they dug her up after she was buried and relocated her to a cold storage warehouse where she would be preserved in the cold. They didn't want to deal with bringing all this to light because that would bring problems onto the newborn Iris, so they didn't want to go public with any of this. They didn't want to make a huge deal because So Sejima, the one who caused all this, was extremely powerful and influential. So Hitomi starts raising Iris as her own daughter, and that's basically the first chunk of the story, 18 years ago. So then we have part two. It's going to be stuff that takes place 6 years ago. So 6 years ago, we have two things going on. Again, one is with the Hitomi and Renju group. And the other is with, again, Saito Sejima and the people around him. In addition, there is a third group at play that intersects with both these groups. That is the Police 3, who later will be our core 3 members of Abyss. And that is Shizue Kuranushi, aka Boss, Hayato Yagyu, and Futa Amanoma, aka Pewter. So in Hitomi's group, we have a cop show up, Hayato Yagyu, who he has a bit of a trouble past. He ended up becoming an assassin as a cop and doing a lot of extrajudicial killings because of the ineffectuality of the justice system. This then got found out by the Kumakura clan, and he started getting blackmailed by the Kumakura clan into being a hitman for them under the codename Falco. One day, while dealing with all of this, he's at Ikume Shrine, and he meets this woman who was about to basically reveal his location, so he sexually assaults her to kiss her to keep her quiet, and how he starts eventually dating Hitomi, and he starts becoming a father figure to Iris, and she calls him Uncle. So we have Yagyu is Uncle, is Falco, 6 years ago. The other half of this is that Saito Sejima and Rohan Kumakura have made an alliance because they want to kill together. Rohan wants to get the right eyeballs and Saito wants to kill. So they team up, and that is who the Cyclops serial killer was. It was actually the two of them. So that's who the Cyclops serial killer was 6 years ago. They were killing these women, and then removing their eyeballs, again, the right eyeball for these murders. And during this, these two forces kind of meet head to head because Rohan realizes Iris is alive. I don't remember how he realizes this, and decides that Iris and Hitomi need to be killed to protect Sosejima. So he puts out a hit, but because the hitman of the Kumakura clan at this time is, as we said, Hayato Yagyu is Falco, he's now tasked with killing his girlfriend and his daughter figure. And he doesn't want to do that, so he finally goes and talks to his friend from the police academy, who we know as Boss, Shizue Kurinushi, and Boss and him devise this plan to get Rohan Kumakura in under false or trumped up charges or whatever to be able to sync with him. So that's exactly what they do. They get Rohan, they bring him into the Abyss, and he syncs with Yagyu. At this point, we find out that the sync machine, which we haven't really mentioned, allows them to investigate people's dreams, but also has a secondary function where they can do mind transfer. So Yagyu actually transfers into the mind of Rohan Kumakura with the intent of removing the hit on Hitomi. Unfortunately, Rohan gets let out of Abyss so he can go about his day because he's now in the body of a detective, and they didn't tell everyone about this. So he goes himself to Hitomi's place to murder her. Yagyu, now in Rohan's body, goes to stop this, and that is when Rohan and Boss show up at Hitomi's place and end up shooting Hitomi in the shoulder, causing her to have the right shoulder paralysis. In order to stop Rohan in Yagyu's body from killing her flat out. So now Rohan in Yagyu's body is taken to prison. During the sync, the other thing we learned was that Rohan was involved in the Cyclops serial killing and that he had a partner, which was Saito Sejima. So we then have Yagyu in Rohan's body go interrogate Saito Sejima in order to try to figure out what all happened and try to get incriminating evidence to put them both away permanently. Not really Rohan, they're not going to try to put him away because, again, he's a detective in the body now. However, this backfires. Saito Sejima notices things are up and uses the power and influence of his father in order to do two major things. The first one is kidnap Yagyu in Rohan's body, and the second, and then interrogate and find out a lot of information. And the second was they stole the prototype sync machine that would allow him to then switch bodies with people. The downside of the prototype sync machine was that it requires the left eye to be removed. Not necessarily fully, but Saito was too lazy to put the eyes back in properly, so he was just ripping them out. So now he has the ability to swap bodies and stuff, and so he takes his own consciousness and swaps it into the body of Rohan Kumakura, putting Yagyu into the body of Saito Sejima. However, this one doesn't go as planned. It gets interrupted in the middle, and Yagyu loses his memory. From this point forward, Yagyu in Saito's body becomes known as Kaname Date. At the same time, Rohan Kumakura is in the body of 89, aka Yagyu. We're just going to call him 89 from now on. And Saito Sejima is in the body of Rohan Kumakura. Saito in Rohan's body gets taken to a special mental hospital where he lives for about 5 years. We're going to come back to him later because now we do have a little bit more plot going on the side. So part 3 of this is kind of what happens in the last 6 years. So now we have Kaname Date. He has no memory as of 6 years ago, and he's starting essentially a new life as an agent of Abyss. He makes friends with a couple people. He has an informant that he makes friends with, which is Mama at Marble. He has drinking buddies in both Renju and Shoko and a few other people we assume in his life. Anyways, back to part 3. So we have Date without an eye for a little bit, But then after a year, he gets an artificial eye implant named Iva. They become partners 5 years ago, and they've been working together ever since. In addition to all of that going on, he finds out that Shoko and Renju are abusing their daughter, and he calls them out on it, and they make a plan for her to come live with him, so he becomes her effective guardian as of 4 years ago. More recently, we have a couple things going on. Iris is now is around 18. She's grown up a bit. She's starting her career as an idol. She worked a little bit in the Mermaid Cafe for a little while, both of which sponsored by Renju, who owns his own production company and the Maid Cafe. And she starts becoming famous as a net idol under the name of Aset or Tessa. Okay. During all of this time, Hitomi's become a elementary school teacher, eventually becoming specifically Mizuki, Shoko and Renju's daughter's teacher. And then the only other character that we haven't really talked about is what's been happening with Saito Sejima. Rohan Kumakura has been locked up in jail this whole time, but Saito Sejima was in a mental hospital until about a year before the game actually starts. At which point, remember, in Rohan Kumakura's body, manages to get out, kidnap Shoko Nadami in some way, and swap into her body. So now he's in the body of Shoko Nadami. Shoko is in Rohan's body, but this makes her go crazy and she commits suicide. So now we're to the fourth part of this, which is going to be breaking down the flowchart. The first thing that happens, and we don't know the details of this when playing through the game, but again, remember, we're talking about the actuality of what happened, not what the game leads us to believe as we're discovering it. But Saito Sejima, in Shoko's body, decides to start enacting his plan to get revenge on Kaname Date in order to try to get his body back. And the way he does this is he starts off by getting Renju Okiura to come with him to the abandoned chemical plant, and so that he can swap bodies from Shoko Nadami into Renju Okiura. So now Saito, in the body of Renju Okiura, kills Shoko Nadami's body with Renju's consciousness in it. The left eye is removed from the sinking process, and he decides to take this body and dispose of it at Bloom Park. He then uses his abilities as Renju to start manipulating things. He texts Mizuki to bring her to Bloom Park so she discovers her mom's body. She brings Ota with her, and Ota ends up calling the police to let them know that they found a dead body. And that's the very first scene of the game, is us as the police investigating this dead body we found at Bloom Park. So on Friday, when we discover the body, we also discover Mizuki at the scene of the crime, holding an ice pick that was apparently in Shoko's eye and had been used to kill her. She's also aphonic, meaning she cannot speak, and so she's sitting there traumatized and just cannot communicate at all. That's the events of essentially Friday. Saturday, we start investigating the death of Shoko Nadami. We can't talk to Mizuki because, as we said prior, she's aphonic. She cannot speak, so we start following the other lead we had, which is Ota Matsushita. So we find Ota Matsushita, and when we find him, he's at Lemniscate, the production company owned by Renju Okiura, and he's waiting for a pop idol, Aset, aka Tessa, aka Iris. This is when Kaname Date and Iris first meet. That night, so Saturday night, then we sync with Mizuki, we do the dream policing and try to help her cure her aphonia. So if we cure her aphonia, we get to talk to her and we learn that there was a person or something that she saw when she was at the park. We don't know the details, she couldn't really see much. So we go back to the park to investigate it. We find old abandoned subway tracks. We look at cameras for all this, and we find out that it was Renju's car that was the one going along the tracks. Renju was the only one it could be. We do some investigating. While we're syncing with Mizuki, Saito Sejima, in Renju's body, gets Iris to come to the Mermaid Cafe that he owns to try to get her. He enticed her with just a job offer basically, but once she was out there, he drugged her and took her to the abandoned chemical plant where he could sink and take over her body. So now Iris is in Renju's body, and Saito is in Iris's body. So he kills off Iris in Renju's body. So now we have Saito in Iris's body, and she decides to take Renju's body in a barrel and take it to the Mermaid Cafe to string it up. While she's transporting the body, however, she runs into Ota again while she's driving illegally without a license. So she lies and is like, hey, don't tell anyone I was doing this. This will come up again later. So then Saito in Iris's body strings up Renju in Sunfish Pocket and leaves him to be discovered. He's then discovered later this night by Date and Mizuki after Mizuki's aphonia gets cured. So now we have our second dead body of the game. We then spend day 3 investigating with Mizuki. We take her along with us because she doesn't want to be alone. She just lost both of her parents, and we are her guardian. So she wants to stay with us. She helps us investigate, and we eventually run into Iris again. At this point, we know, again, we run into Iris. It's actually Saito in there, but we bring her in for questioning and eventually realize that she's texting Ota saying, hey, don't say anything about that thing. That thing referring to the fact that she was driving when she wasn't supposed to be. But after the interrogation, we sync with her. So now we're syncing with Iris. It's actually syncing with Saito. And we find out that in Cyrus's brain, there's all these memories of the old Cyclops serial killings, which makes sense because, again, it's actually Saito in Iris's body. In this Somnium, though, there's a couple different ways we can figure out. There's either we find out that Iris just has those memories, or we find out that Iris has these memories and we see the image of Date Kaname in the reflection. The reason we'd be seeing this is because, again, it's Saito's memory. It's actually Saito's Somnium, and he has memory of his own body doing those murders. So assuming we don't find out about that part yet, in the first timeline we're going to talk about, we do not learn about Date's involvement in this. So without learning that Date Kaname's body was involved with the original Cyclops serial killing, we continue on by taking Iris to Ota, because honestly we need to question Ota about what that thing was that he was asked to hide. When we find him, he hits us over the head with a wok, and we go unconscious. After Ota hits us over the head with the wok, Saito in Iris's body takes Mayumi's knife and flees with Ota, where they go and stop at a grocery store type thing very briefly. Ota then goes inside to get something, so Saito in Iris's body goes to his old house to talk to his father, at which point, again, he drugs his father, takes him with her, or takes him with them to the abandoned chemical factory so that he can do another mind swap, this time from Iris's body to So's body, and then kill So in Iris's body. He decides to kill her by taking her to the old fishery warehouse and cutting her in half with the ice saw while streaming it online. This gets interrupted by Ota, who manages to save them both in this timeline. So now at this point we have So Sejima in Iris's body, who's very severely injured. We have Ota, who saved her. We have an injured Saito in So Sejima's body. And then we get to the last branching path of the first major timeline. So in this, we investigate what happened with Ota. He's still very drugged up and we need to know details. One of two things happen. We either discover that the knife that was used to assault Iris and to end up stabbing him when he was rescuing Iris was his mom's knife. And if we find out it's his mom's knife, then we start investigating him and his mom. We learn more about their backstory. That's Ota's route. We don't get much more new information during this. However, during this, Saito Sejima gets to finish the next step of his plan, where he gets Boss to come to meet him somewhere as Sosajima, then drugs Boss, takes Boss to the old warehouse, swaps into her body, so Boss gets put into So's body, and Saito kills Boss in So's body. So now Saito is in the body of Boss, and that's as far as this timeline goes. I do want to note, however, that one of the funny things about this timeline is that at the end of it, we find out that Iris is now awake from her surgery and all that stuff. But if you've been paying attention, Iris is actually not in her own body, and that's So in Iris's body. Backtracking a little bit to this last split, if instead of figuring out that it was his mom's knife that was used to attack them, if we learned that he fought back and managed to wound his attacker, then because he wounded his attacker, we now know that there is blood at the crime scene that belongs to the attacker. So we go to investigate that blood, eventually getting a DNA match to Sosajima. So this allows us to then declare Sosajima is the new Cyclops serial killer, the one who's been killing all of these people. And we go to confront him with Mizuki, and we eventually murder Sosajima again, and we eventually murder Saito Sajima in So's body, which effectively ends all of the Cyclops serial killing. This route actually wraps up nicely. Date and Mizuki are a happy family. Good things. This is a good ending. The last thing I want to do while on this half is cover this green route. So again, at this point, at this juncture, remember we had Iris was already dead, died in Renju's body. We had Saito Sajima in Iris's body. If we instead discovered that Konami Date's body was involved in the original Cyclops serial killing, things played a little differently. We still take Iris to meet Ota. We still get knocked out, but this time, instead of it being with the walk, we get tased. So Aiba gets taken out of commission at the same time. Once we get tased, a lot of the same things happen as before, where Ota and Iris abscond. Iris gets away, manages to contact Sosajima, gets Sosajima to swap bodies at the plant. Ota kind of gets left behind in this, but eventually catches up to them at the warehouse and still tries to fight off Sosajima, but is unsuccessful in this route. Instead, what ends up happening is that Saito in Sosajima's body kills Sosajima in Iris's body with the ice cutter, and then kills Ota by stabbing him in the stomach and leaving him to bleed out. Ota's death is one of the few people in this whole storyline that die in their own body. This plays out very similar to one of the previous routes, where now Saito Sajima is in Sajima's body, contacts Boss, swaps into Boss's body, kills Boss in Sosajima's body, cuts up the body and hides it. And when this is discovered that Sosajima's dead, we actually figure out that Boss was involved with this. We get video confirmation that Boss's body, at least, was used to kill Sosajima's body. Again, we know that this is actually Saito Sajima killing Boss. But now Saito gets brought in, and we sync with them. And during the sync, we see that they have the memory of all of the new killings. And so we confront them. During this huge confrontation, Saito Sajima reveals his ace in the hole, that he has Hitomi kidnapped and she's strapped to a bunch of bombs, and gives us no choice besides to get his old body back. Because that is when he reveals his whole goal this whole time was just to get his body back. So we do one final mind swap where he goes from Boss's body into his original body, and us as Konami Date get sent into Boss's body. Unfortunately, after the swap happens, Saito decides to activate his ace in the hole and still kill Hitomi. Aiba then saves the day by paralyzing Saito Sajima in his own body, and then that's kind of where this one ends because we have a result. We have the killer in custody. There's a lot of things that are messed up. We have people in the wrong bodies and stuff, but that's where that timeline ends. final parts are going to be this right half of this flowchart. So if instead of curing Miski of her aphonia at the end of day 2, we failed to do that, we'll instead see that she had the memory of a dead body that looks like Iris that had been stabbed to death and frozen. So we start investigating that a bit, as well as our normal investigation. This next route focuses heavily on people we haven't talked about in the other half, because this is where we see a lot more about Hitomi and Iris. While in the other half, Saito Sejima, at this point in Renju's body, manages to kidnap Iris. Because we saw Iris's dead body in the Somnium, we called her and told her not to go out. This is the major change that diverges everything between these two paths. Because Iris doesn't go out to meet Renju, Saito Sejima has to come to her. So he comes to her to try to get her to come with him, but because of the fact that he now has come to her, he ends up in a car accident, which sends him to the hospital and keeps him out of the way for a few hours. However, in the middle of the night, he flees the hospital, manages to make it to Iris' house, and convinces her to come with him. Unfortunately, because of the car accident, he doesn't have his drugs with him, so he can't drug her. But he does still try to do his plan where he takes her to the sync machine to mind swap, but because she's not drugged, she manages to escape. So Saito is in Renju's body. The body is not doing good. It was in a car accident. He's been pushing it to its limit. It is failing on him. So he has to come up with another plan. So what he does is he calls Renju's lover, Pewter, who works for Abyss, and asks him if he can break 89 out of jail. Now, 89, again, this is Rohan Kumakura in Kaname Date's original body, and Pewter obliges. So Pewter breaks 89 out of jail, so now Renju has an ally. Saito in Renju's body takes Rohan in Yagyu's body, Saito in Renju's body then takes Rohan in Kaname Date's body to do the mind swap. So then we end up with Saito Sejima in Kaname Date's original body, Kaname Date in Saito Sejima's original body, and Rohan Kumakura in Renju Okira's body bleeding out. So at this point, Iris has been missing. We know she's missing, so we spend most of this third day searching for Iris with very little success. We eventually follow So Sejima to the Okira fishery warehouse, where we discover a frozen body. Specifically, this is Monika's frozen body, but it's the frozen body we saw in the Somnium. It looks like Iris. We start getting freaked out, and we bring So in for questioning. However, it turns out that the body was just put there by Hitomi to try to blackmail So for money. Once we leave the warehouse, Hitomi puts the body back where it was hidden, meaning later, when cops show up to search for the body, they find nothing. After the police discover that there was nothing at the warehouse, we go to check on Iris, and we discover her at her house with Miski and her mom. Everything's okay. They're all okay. Iris is not dead. We do spend the next day trying to track down Renju and 89. That is when 89 escapes, before ending the day by syncing with Iris for the first time. This is the last branching path we're going to talk about. This goes one of two ways. Either we trust Iris about what she tells us, or we don't. If we trust her, we end up trying to save her life, and we discover the chemical plant with the sync machine, but that's pretty much all. Nothing terribly happens. Nothing terribly new happens here. And again, it just kind of ends somewhat unresolved. However, if we don't trust her, then what ends up happening instead is that we take Iris to Ota's house to have Ota protect her and hide her. But she runs away because Saito in Kaname Date's body asks her to come with him. Now, it's important to remember, because we haven't talked about this in a while, Iris thinks that body is her father figure. She doesn't know that it's actually Saito in that body. So she goes with him willingly, and he takes her to the abandoned chemical plant where the sync machine is and holds her hostage to try to get Date and Hitomi to come there. During this time, Kaname and Hitomi sync and discuss, and we learn all of the backstory that we talked about in the first couple parts of this before the two of them go to the abandoned chemical plant to confront Saito. When we go to confront him, he does manage to get the drop on us and force us to swap bodies. So now, finally, at this point, all the living people are in the correct bodies, and it's become so much easier to talk about. So now everybody in their correct bodies is at the chemical warehouse. At the chemical warehouse, we have Saito in his body. We got Kaname Date in his body. We got Moma shows up. We got Ota and Mizuki show up to help us. We had Iris and Hitomi, who were both kidnapped and held hostage. And this is the final confrontation between Kaname Date and Saito Sejima, where the day is saved by our assistant, Aiba, who, again, was in Saito's head and just decided to kill him to save the day. Unfortunately, this also cost Aiba her life. In the epilogue, however, 3 months later, we find out that Pewter, who had been arrested for his assistance in breaking 89 out of jail, has been able to recreate Aiba to the point that we now have Aiba brought back, and that's essentially where the game ends. So, all of that said, talked about everything I can think of for all of this. I know I probably forgot some details because honestly, this game has so much going on, and it's hard for me to put all of that into a single video outlining all this plot. But I'm hoping that somewhat this helped with keeping track of all the mind swaps and all of the confusion of all that stuff. So hopefully that helps. I want to take a moment to say thank you to everyone who watched this. I really appreciate it. If you want to check out my Let's Play, we did play the whole game blind, and I'll link the playlist for that below. But thank you everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. If you liked the video, please give it a like or a comment, or consider subscribing to my channel. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye!